It's not many sleeps to go, is it? We're edging towards Christmas. Lots of little things we get excited about at this time of year, like the movies and the mulled wine, the carolers. If you're like me, probably a good Christmas market. As I mentioned, I was at one yesterday. Loved it. And as well as all the other stuff going on at the markets, I do love seeing all the decorative pieces that have been made by wood turners. And it's an incredible artistic process, as we'll discover. Malcolm Cleaver is chairman of the Berkshire Wood Turners Association and is with me in the studio. So lovely to see you, Malcolm, and thank you for bringing in all the bits and pieces, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But first of all, why this tie-up between wood turning and Christmas markets? How has this come about?
Well, Paul, hi. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
I think it's just that you can make small, attractive, handmade items, and nowadays a lot of people are looking for something that is a bit different, and you can buy lots of plastic baubles and things like that on your tree to put on your tree. But if you make something that's actually out of wood, a little Christmas tree or an angel or something like that, people love it and they can keep using it for year after year. So it's sustainable. And if, like me, you try and make most of your stuff from local wood, people love it that they can say, well, you know, this is from Marlow Woods, bit of wood I scrumped from the Marlow Common or something of that nature.
Is that what you do? You go out and you just see what's lying around?
You can do. I mean, as chairman of the Wood Turning Club, now we're kind of like besieged with people offering us a branch or a tree that's come down. But when I first started to turn, I had no idea where to get wood from. Most of our new turners, just the same. So it's just go to the log pile, get something from the wood that you'd be burning. After that, you start to root around and you can find lots of people that will give you bits of wood. Because if you buy it, which you can from professional proper businesses that dry it and make it all very easy for you to use, it's quite expensive. So best to scrump it if you can.
Absolutely right. Good for the environment too. Save the stuff just lying around decomposing, putting carbon back into the air. Let's preserve it as an ornament. And you have brought in loads here, and I have to say, gobsmacked at the intricacy of some of these things. Maybe not the intricacy of the very first thing you have in front of you here, which I have to say looks real. I could easily pick that up and go to eat it. It's a banana.
It is a banana, and I actually turned this in a live demonstration in 2017, about a year after I'd started to wood turn. And I must have been bonkers. I did it up at Axminster, which is the store in High Wycombe, which sells lathes and stuff of that nature. And it is ridiculously complicated because a banana, as most of the most of the viewers can't see because we're on the radio, when you actually turn this, it's whizzing around all sorts of strange angles. But it was great fun, and I kept all my knuckles. That's the main thing.
And what about the pigment? Is that natural pigment of the wood, or
this is no? This is actually stained with a yellow stain, and it's a little bit of black stain on it. And then I burnt it, and this is pyrography with a pen that gets red hot at the tip. It's a pyrography pen, it's called. And then burnt these marks in so that it looks like it's a banana about to turn over in your fruit bowl.
It does. That's a good way to put it. It's one that you would say, I better have that now because by tomorrow it's going to go off a bit. Very, very realistic. And I'm just wondering what made you in 2017 or whenever it was, at whatever stage of your life you were, thinking, do you know what's missing from my life? I want to be a wood turner.
Yeah, well, I wonder that myself, actually. I mean, that was all that... It just happened that I was in the Isle of Wight on a weekend trip, and I went to one of the sort of tourist spots that are there, and there was a chap who was a wood turner. And I was coming up towards retirement, and I looked at the stuff and I thought, well, you know, I've always done a bit of DIY and made kitchen cupboards and stuff of that nature. I'll go and buy a lathe and have a go. Well, I did exactly what I tell everybody now not to do. I just went and tried it myself, and I had pieces of wood flying off the lathe and low-flying wood. I didn't take any lessons to start with. I just watched YouTube. But I do recommend people to... take a couple of lessons if they can. It's a bit safer. And I just took to it. I don't know why. I just did. And as I say, earlier on, I started demonstrating about a year after I'd started to turn. and I've been demonstrating and helping organise local things ever since.
And do you do this now for a living, or is this a bit of a hobby, or what?
It is a hobby, and I took it up because it was also something I could do from home with a workshop at home, because my wife has got MS, and I took early retirement so that I could be more home-based.
What were you doing until you retired?
I was a civil engineer, and I was the managing partner of a local design consultancy.
Oh, so you understand form?
I understand form, and that does help. As I've taught, without being rude to the profession, I've taught an accountant who'd never actually held a chisel or a hammer in anger, and you've got a lot to learn about just basic sort of DIY type skills, if you like, when you start off. So it is easier if you've got an idea of 3D form and a little bit of practicality, but anybody can learn.
Well, I'm not sure that anybody, I'm thinking of myself, could ever get to the standard of the stuff that you have brought in here. We'll move on from the banana in a moment and look at some of the very intricate things. Maybe we'll have a look at the Christmas tree first, and we'll do that right after this. And to sweet, my guest is Malcolm Cleaver, chairman of the Berkshire Woodturners Association. We've been talking about these wonderful sculpted pieces that you can see in Christmas markets, and we spoke about the banana. And when we were talking about the other bits and bobs, you were saying that you do this on a lathe. What exactly is a lathe? How would you describe it?
That's probably a good question, actually, because when I first started the idea of doing wood turning, I didn't actually know what it was all about at all. And people get wood turning, carving mixed up. So wood turning, basically, you have to have nowadays a motor, so it's electrically driven, which allows you to clamp a piece of wood in that is running horizontally, and you have a lathe bed so that you've got the ability to rest your chisel on something that doesn't move. So the wood moves, and you use the gouges and chisels to gently carve away the wood into the shapes that you want. And there's all sorts of different ways, as you could perhaps imagine, that people have developed as to how to grip the wood, what types of chisels to use, and how you can then produce all these different and complicated forms. Of course, wood turning goes back to about 600 BC originally.
Really?
There are pictures way back in Egyptian time when they did it differently then, all the way through to Wickham being the centre of the Windsor chair making industry, which has been making Windsor chairs from 1700, and that was all done by wood turners turning the wood into spindles and chair legs out in the forest.
And I have done that myself, I have to tell you.
Excellent.
I presented a schools programme for years for the BBC called Zigzag, and one of them we did was a medieval look at history. And I was asked to do the lathe and to carve a spindle. And the problem I found was, of course, back then, if you're going to be authentic, there was none of this having a motor. It was all done with your legs.
Pole lathes, yeah.
Oh, good grief. After 2 minutes...
What a respect you got for these old boys out in the forest.
Hugely huge. How they could walk after that, I've no idea.
Well, I volunteer at the National Trust up at Hewenden as part of a group called the Rustic Products Team, and we make stuff usually from wood from the estate. And I spent a whole day on one occasion, just before COVID, demonstrating the pole lathe, and I had a queue of people who is on their bucket list to have a go on a pole lathe. Well, 6 hours after doing that, my right leg was twice the size of my left leg, and I was absolutely knackered.
I'm not surprised. Hey, listen, I do want to get round to talking about some of the pieces you got here before we finish. The Christmas tree, which is beautiful. If I say to somebody, it's a bit like a cone on a base with grooves running around it, it looks immaculate. How do you do that? How do you turn something like that?
Well, this is turned from what's known as a spindle, so it's horizontally gripped in the lathe. It's a piece of wood that's a cylinder, and we turn it down, because there's two types of turning: there's spindle turning and bowl turning. This is a spindle, so you turn it down between centres, gripped very carefully, and then all these slots on it are done by eye with a narrow tool. It's called parting down to create the slots. Everything I do is done by eye. I rarely measure anything because I can't be bothered, and everything then comes out individual and different.
It's lovely to have that individuality, but I have to say, even if you did do it just by eye, it looks so symmetrically done and immaculately done. It looks very precise.
Thank you.
No, it does. This This thing here, which, how can I describe it? It looks like a bell almost, with a handle sticking up in the air, and you look like if you pick it up, you could shake it, and a noise would come out. But it's nothing of the sort. It's immaculate. It's different types of wood. What is it?
Well, this is actually a little box. So the stalk on the top, we call them a finial. So that's the handle, if you like. And then there's a lid that you lift off. And inside the little triangular shaped base is space to put a few rings, a little bit of decoration, this spiraling pattern that you can create. Basically, you create that using a cog on a stick, I call it, which you use in a very careful way against the wood to create these patterns.
It's like etching.
It's like etching, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on. Now, as you will have gathered listening at home, Malcolm is never going to do anything the easy way. If I said to you, I've got a carved egg cup in front of me, you would visualise what that looks like. But it's a carved egg cup on, well, you describe it.
Well, it's almost like a carved egg cup with a crankshaft in the middle. So anybody who's done a bit of engineering and knows what a crankshaft in an engine is.
To you and me, it's a corkscrew.
Yeah, that's right.
A wobbly corkscrew.
A wobbly corkscrew. So the wobbly bit in the middle is achieved by manipulating how the wood is gripped on the lathe. So it's very difficult to actually describe without you seeing it, but you basically have to be very careful and move it in different axes, and when you turn it, this is whooshing around a bit like the banana, and you've got lots of air and you can't really tell what you're doing, and you have to be very careful to make sure A, you don't break it, and B, you don't break your fingers.
Well, sadly, we have to finish up here, and you've got other pieces there. We could talk to you all day. I find it fascinating. Where can people find your work?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I try not to sell too much stuff because I do mostly for charity, family and friends, but I do have a few pieces in Hayden Gallery in Marlow, in the High Street in Marlow next to Sainsbury's, and they've taken lots of Christmas decorations, and also, I didn't bring one with me, I do little hedgehogs, but you'd have to imagine what that looks like, or perhaps nip into Hayden Gallery and have a look.
Good idea. Malcolm, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.